Right, now my turn. I had a bit of an inspiration this morning about when things don't quite work. Sometimes you have to be willing to make some changes. And so, please turn to the response of reading 645, your hymnal, and this is by Walt Whitman, called The Song of the Open Road. And so I will do the regular manuscript, and you can do the italics. Afoot and lighthearted, I take to the open road, healthy, free, the world before me.
Henceforth I ask not good fortune, I myself am good fortune, strong and content, I travel the open road.
I inhale great draughts of space, the east and the west are mine, and the north and the south are mine.
All seems beautiful to me. I can repeat over to men and women, you have done such good to me, I would do the same to you.
Whoever you are, come travel with me. However sweet these laid-up stores, however convenient this dwelling, we cannot remain here.
However sheltered this fort, and however calm these waters, we must not anchor here.
Together, the inducements shall be greater. We will sail pathless in wild seas.
We will go where winds blow, waves dash, and the Yankee clipper speeds by under full sail.
Forward, after the great companions, and to belong to them. They too are on the road.
Onward to that which is endless, as it was beginningless, to undergo much, tramps of days, rests of nights.
To see nothing anywhere but what you may reach it and pass it. To look up or down, no road, but it stretches and waits for you.
To know the universe itself as a road, as many roads, as roads for traveling souls.
Okay. This being a special weekend, I'm feeling honored to do my spiritual journey on Darwin Day, or Darwin Weekend, also the birthday of Thomas Edison. If either of them were here today, you would probably want to hear their spiritual journeys. But since they're not, you have to hear from me. But considering my age, mine is only about a third as long as theirs would be. So I have placed 5 time points on this chart, which I have in front of me here. And there are probably a few others time points, but those are the ones that I can document. But before I start there, my journey would have to start with my mother, who, along with her 2 sisters and brother, were raised Catholic in what was the Hungarian Empire, now Romania, in the Transylvania Mountains. I'm not sure how that came to be, but considering the Holocaust and the war that came along not long after, it worked out well for their survival. My mother graduated from high school at 15 and went on to Budapest to take a pre-med degree. All of that disappeared overnight when the Nazis came. My mother ended up at a displaced persons camp outside of Berlin, and eventually was rescued by 2 men, one who would become my father and the other my godfather. Unfortunately, my godfather-to-be was already taken. In a whirlwind romance, my mother got married at the end of the war, and that's this first dot right here, and the 2 of them settled with my grandparents, his parents, in Indiana. Okay, surprise number 1 coming up. I happen to be the 7th of 7 children. Unfortunately, the first 6 didn't survive. My sister, first one, her name was Beverly. She was too premature, and in 1947, medical science didn't have a way to save her. Numbers 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, all miscarriages, including a set of twins. After number 6, my mother went into a deep state of depression and declared there would be no children in the family. Well, apparently something happened after that, because I'm here now, and so I'm not sure. There you go. So that brings me to my first time point. My father's side of the family were Methodists, my mother's side Catholic, but they were not practicing Methodists. The decision was made to baptize me as an Episcopalian, which was the religion of my godfather. I guess it was kind of a compromise. So at the end of the 10th week on this planet, March 23rd, 1952, that ceremony took place. I was really not brought up as anything. We didn't attend church for all intents and purposes at that time, so I could have just as easily been an atheist. By the early 1960s, my mother divorced my father. He was totally a womanizer, not a good husband, not a good father, and at that time sought solace by attending a local Catholic church in Wauwatosa, where we were living at that time, and so I tagged along with her. But then she decided to remarry, met my stepfather, and was excommunicated. And at that time she decided to become agnostic. So we'll put that in right there. And so then my stepfather was Lutheran. And again, they didn't really practice religion, or he didn't. And so pretty much that was my time up to that point, and which brings me to my time in the Army in 1971. And at that time, my godfather in Missouri, and he was a military man, inspired me to join the military. So it was a Sunday after Thanksgiving in 1971, and I stopped at a local USO just outside the base at Fort Lee, Virginia, where I was stationed. And so this couple walks up to me, and the guy says, "Have you been saved?" And I say, "Saved from what?" He said, "You need to be saved, man. Give your life to Jesus." So I decided to play along at that time, and whatever they were telling me, and apparently I got saved that day. So I never started attending church until 1975 when I moved to Nashville. I don't know exactly how I ended up in Nashville, but I was looking to strike out on my own. And so I decided to find out about this Episcopal thing. And so I went to the phone book. At that time I lived at 2800 Belmont Boulevard and found that there was a St. Bartholomew's Episcopal Church at 4800 Belmont. So I thought, well, that couldn't be too far. So I didn't have a car back at that time. So then I started walking and walking, and I found it was a lot further than I thought it was. Finally got there. Everyone was so nice. It turned out that they had a confirmation class that was just starting, and I was invited to join. So that brings me to my second time point, December 14th, 1975. I was confirmed as an Episcopalian. So I kept going there to St. Bartholomew's for about 3 years, and eventually I just dropped away. Okay, my second surprise and third time point, I have neither my father's nor my stepfather's name. By court order, I took my name from my godfather, Lieutenant Colonel Arvin Delano Reese. At that time, I also took the name from my mother's maiden name, so now I have something old and something borrowed. So my full name, and I'll go ahead and sign it. Jeffrey Makshai Reese. 17 letters. 17 is just a lucky number for me. So by 1984, I moved back to Milwaukee. My mother and stepfather were still living there, and my mother found me a nice apartment across the street from where they were living. At that time, I started questioning my faith. I got up early one morning and walked down to McKinley Beach, just down the hill from my apartment, to watch the sunrise. It was a beautiful, clear morning, and as I stood there on the beach, the sun came up. I felt the sensation like you do when you step on an escalator. I know we're in constant motion on the earth, but you don't notice it unless you watch a sunrise or sunset. I mean, there's just something about that. So I think I attended one more Episcopal service, one more time after that, and I decided there was no future in that for me. Somehow I just didn't feel comfortable with a God that writes people off by sending them to an awful place. So then the late 80s, early 90s found me going for various New Age things. I acquired crystals, went through rebirthing, walked over hot coals, and none of these things got me going. So by 1995, I found a group called Milwaukee Unbelievers, and so that got me curious. So at one meeting, I got a chance to meet with Dan Barker, who's from the Freedom from Religion Foundation in Madison, and so it got me interested. So eventually that Milwaukee Unbelievers disbanded, and so then I started attending a once-a-month group in Madison called Atheists and Agnostics of Wisconsin. They met for several years, and by 2003 they disbanded. Then I got involved with a group shortly after my mother passed away with Alzheimer's called Oshkosh Free Thinkers. This was kind of a rogue group of about a dozen people that got together at various places to discuss atheism. So that takes me to my fourth time point, which is way over here. So now I'm up to November 9th, 2008. Oshkosh Free Thinkers staged something called a debaptism. This is something I thought seemed pretty appropriate. So how do you debaptize someone? Very simple. You use a hair blower. Unfortunately, my time with Oshkosh Free Thinkers was short-lived. What happened is I expressed an opinion about something, and so that's when I found out that in a Free Thinkers group, your thoughts are free, but if you got an opinion, it's going to cost you. So about that time, I started noticing that some of my friends were attending a Unitarian church. There was Jane Dennis and Diana Beck, and they were asking me, why not just come over and see what we're about? And so I said, well, I'm a non-believer, and I don't go much for ritual. If truth be told, I don't like the term atheist either, because it caters to the fact that there are believers. And if nobody believed in anything, the term atheist would be meaningless. So, between being an atheist, free thinker, humanist, naturist, I did become interested in the Earth Spirit group. And so, at some point I decided to join Open Circle, and so that brings me up to my fifth and last, most recent time point, which was March 17th, 2013. And that is when I became a member here. And so I'm also still a member of Freedom from Religion Foundation. I feel that this is a very important issue for me, the separation of church and government. Other issues I care about: clean environment, climate change. Do we even have a future on this earth? So I am all kinds of things, but most of all, I'm a guest on this planet, and I act appropriately. And so I would like to close this part of it out by having you join in one of my favorite songs by John Lennon called Imagine.